Tonight, Daly River evacuees struggling in Darwin and wondering when they can go home. And the NT government announces a $100 million flood recovery fund. Good evening, I'm Kyle Dowling. This is ABC News, Northern Territory. Also tonight, interest rates on the rise again. The federal government facing growing pressure over soaring petrol prices. And the Matildas prepare to take on China in the Asian Cup semi-final. Members of the remote Aboriginal community of Nauyu have spent more than a month this year as evacuees 220 kilometres away in Darwin. With their homes still submerged, it's going to be some time before they'll be able to return home.
A long way from the horror unfolding at home.
A lot of people lost their home, belongings, what they work for. Managed to keep calm, be together.
For the second time in as many months, Daly River residents receiving no warning of the massive flood that was about to hit, and then given just minutes to flee.
It just snuck up on us. No one was prepared for it. There was no warning. And that's the frightening thing. There was nothing in place. So it was all a rush.
For decades, there's been conversations around moving the natural disaster-prone community to higher ground. The sheer magnitude of this flood has become a catalyst, renewing calls to get that done or to build an evacuation centre closer to home.
Instead of waiting for it to be on top of us, there needs to be some sort of thing in place that, alarm goes off, warnings or something prior.
Move the whole town, take it away somewhere else, on the higher ground, keep us safe from coming here.
The experience in Darwin adding to the trauma.
The bloke turned up with his 2 samurai sword. People were scared in that building. People was running out the back door, and they can call you anything. They could be driving past and just, saying something at you. It happened.
Police say it won't be tolerated.
It's never acceptable for people to be exposed to racist, derogatory, intimidating, threatening behaviour. It never is.
Hoping to get home as soon as they can. Courtney Barrett-Peters, ABC News.
The Northern Territory government has announced a $100 million flood recovery fund, promising to build back better as the Defence Force finally begins assisting with the mammoth cleanup task in Katherine. Roads, bridges and an extension of Katherine's levee system are all on the table, but some locals think there should be equal attention on floodproofing homes.
Katherine cleaning up under ominous grey skies as the NT government pledges $100 million for the rebuild.
There's a number of ways in which we can do things to build back better.
The focus, public infrastructure like roads and bridges. The Chief Minister also floating an extension to Katherine's levee system.
Can we make that levee higher, stronger and work even better into the future? These are all the types of infrastructure projects that are on the table.
The senior bureaucrat appointed to run the fund today touring Katherine.
We need a plan and we want to make sure we spend the money wisely.
Yeah, I don't think enough people are collectively on guard about how to rebuild sensibly.
Gorge Road resident Ben Lewis, who's been helping neighbours clean up, wants to see homes rebuilt with floodproof features.
They can change from gyprock to another covering that's more flood resilient, like fibre cement. At the same time, they can shift their power points up higher.
He says government incentive schemes, similar to ones in Brisbane, could make a big difference, especially for people without insurance.
If you're not insured and you're out of pocket, then, you're probably thinking, you're obviously in financial stress and you're not going to invest that extra dollar to change the way your house is.
Meanwhile, the Defence Force has begun assisting with the cleanup.
Maybe they are late to the party, but at least they came.
A welcome development for volunteers like Ben Hockey, whose relentless sandbagging has been widely praised.
Uncle Ben in his truck with his sandbags.
Adrenaline's still pumping, but I think for some people it's definitely a relief, and it is we can go to sleep with peace knowing that, like you said, Calvary's here, help's here.
And for the policeman behind a now world-famous rescue, a joyful reunion with the family and dog he saved from raging waters. A moment of light in tough times for Catherine. James Elton, ABC News.
Ongoing disasters across the NT are putting intense strain on the Territory's health system, and emergency departments are at capacity. Olivana Lathuris joins me now. Ollie, what more can you tell us?
Good evening, Carl. Well, code yellows have now been called for Royal Darwin Hospital, Palmerston Regional Hospital and Alice Springs Hospital. So what that means is that each of those hospital systems are now under significant pressure. They've all experienced a rapid influx of presentations to their emergency departments, and that of course is because of the number of people that are now currently in our regional centres who have had to be evacuated from various communities or have had to leave their homes because of this flood disaster. Now, hospitals here in Darwin are not only having to deal with all these new patients, but they're still dealing with existing patients who were transferred here from Katherine, for example, when that hospital had to be evacuated. The CEO of Northern Territory Health, Chris Hosking, did speak to our local radio program a little earlier this afternoon. Take a listen.
When we called the code yellow earlier on today, I think we had more than 20 patients double bunked in our ED. Every hospital bed was full. We had taken over one ward in the private hospital in order to care for the patients extracted from Katherine, and there were still another 50 people waiting in the waiting room at ED to be seen.
So, Carl, that paints a little bit of a picture of just how much strain the health system is under currently. Now, part of this code yellow is that there are systems in place in the hospitals to prioritise patients, but people in the community are just being urged to contact urgent care clinics if they're experiencing a non-urgent medical situation. Of course, if it is an emergency, of course, still dial 000 and request an ambulance. Carl?
Thanks, Ollie. Just as the weather began clearing, Central Australia has once again been hit by heavy rain overnight, sending water back into Alice Springs and across parts of the Simpson district.
Water rushing through the Tont River, cutting the town in two. Causeways closed, cars stranded.
There's cars there want to get through. Even me, I want to get through as well. I had to leave my car over there.
A familiar sight for an already soaking town.
I didn't expect to see this, especially when it's already flooded previously, and then get up this morning and it's flooding like this again.
Police say around 70 millimetres fell in just a few hours. Once again, they're warning people to avoid floodwaters after 2 people were rescued this morning attempting to cross. For others, the danger is clear.
That's the main thing when it floods like this, for everyone to be safe as well, because it is dangerous when it's like a heavy current and hard current.
While the weather is easing, the advice remains the same. Stay alert and stay out of floodwaters. Chris Marakarani Fitzpatrick, ABC News, Alice Springs.
After more than 50 years in the remote NT town of Nhulunbuy, Woolworths has announced it will likely close its store by next year. Serving the northeast Arnhem Land town since the 1970s, Woolworths said in a statement it was negotiating with another organisation which may take over the store by mid-2027. With the planned closure of the town's Rio Tinto bauxite mine by 2029, the supermarket giant says it had been assessing the viability of its Nhulunbuy operations. Leaders of the region are outraged by the decision, which they say will have a far-reaching impact on the town's residents and surrounding Indigenous communities. Defence analysts have issued a warning about the Northern Territory's defence capabilities, saying the US could become the dominant military force on Australia's own northern shores without proper planning of defence projects. Analysts from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute penned the report, criticising the delivery of defence infrastructure in the Northern Territory. The authors say ADF personnel and equipment are leaving the territory, while the US is investing billions in its military presence here. One of the report's authors says the lack of planning around the NT's defence assets and supporting infrastructure poses a risk to Australian sovereignty.
Whilst we're in an alliance with the US, we also want to maintain our sovereignty, the ability to make decisions on how and where our nation, our Northern Australia, is developed.
The experts predicted it and homeowners feared it. The Reserve Bank announced double trouble today, the second rate rise in as many months. And with the war in the Middle East, economists are warning there could be more bad news to come. Rates have been increased by 1/4 percentage point, taking the cash rate to 4.1%. For someone with a $750,000 mortgage, that means an extra $113 more every month. All of the Big Four banks have announced they will pass the increase on. David Chow reports.
More pain for Australian borrowers.
Ultimately, with inflation that is already too high, the board decided raising the cash rate was the right call.
Inflation above target and a war in the Middle East, helping to spark a fresh rate rise.
We've got an inflation challenge in our economy already, and developments in the Middle East are making that worse.
For the second month in a row, the RBA has lifted the cash rate by 1/4 percentage point in a split vote 5-4, taking it up to 4.1%, back to where it was a year ago. If lenders pass on the rate hike in full, homeowners with a $750,000 mortgage will see their minimum repayment rise by about $113 a month, which means they're now paying $226 more on their home loan since the RBA began lifting rates last month. For a $1 million mortgage, repayments will increase by $151, meaning they'll be paying more than $300 extra.
In breaking news, the Reserve Bank has increased the cash rate by...
It's certainly not the news Anna Sri wanted to hear.
I don't have a lot of non-regular expenses that are, I would say, discretionary spending, really. It's probably just food that I could cut.
The RBA governor was tight-lipped on what might happen next.
If we don't see the numbers indicating that we're going to see a slowing in underlying inflation, let's assume that it stays at 3.5%, then unfortunately we're going to see another rate rise from here.
Would you be prepared to put Australia into recession if that's what it takes to bring inflation much lower?
We don't want to have a recession, but if it's hard to get inflation down, then, we're going to have to deal with that.
Australia now has higher interest rates than many other economies like the US, UK and Canada. But it doesn't seem to be working because inflation here is also higher than in those countries. So that suggests even more rate hikes might be needed. Balancing that pain against the risk of recession, which no one wants. David Chow, ABC News.
Record fuel prices weren't to blame for today's interest rate rise, according to the RBA, but they are contributing to the country's inflation challenge. Australia's biggest fuel companies were today hauled before the competition watchdog as the government sought to allay fears that supplies could run out. Here's National Affairs correspondent Jane Norman.
From coast to coast, pain at the pump. Drivers navigate prices they've never paid before.
It's $100 extra every week now.
At one of Sydney's busiest low-cost servos, business has slowed to a crawl.
It's very quiet now. It's hardly 2 customers in 1 hour.
In some areas, diesel now topping $3 a litre. That's above the national average, according to the NRMA, which has unleaded hovering around $2.30.
We are now where we expect to be. That is cold comfort to Australians looking at the price boards and seeing the most expensive prices they've ever had to pay for.
Fuel companies today hauled before the competition watchdog to explain the rapid price spikes as the Treasurer moves to double fines for those found to be price gouging.
They are on notice.
The government is on alert, but seeking to hose down concerns fuel supplies could dry up.
All companies say to me that they fully expect all deliveries all through March and well into April.
That uncertainty fueling panic buying and creating shortages in regional areas. For now, rationing is off the table.
Because we don't believe at this point that's what is the best solution.
A good start is to make sure that Australian fuel isn't being exported.
Ampol's Brisbane refinery currently exports the petrol it produces because it doesn't yet meet Australian standards. Last week, those standards were temporarily lowered to allow the fuel to flow into the domestic market. It's one of only 2 refineries left onshore, leaving Australia to import 90% of its liquid fuels.
We must get back to drilling for oil and gas.
The war in Iran has sparked a broader debate about how Australia can bolster its fuel security. But the government's focused on the immediate crisis and the huge challenges it presents for the economy. The Treasurer was already planning a tough budget with little room for new cost of living relief. For now, he's holding the line, knowing further spending would only worsen inflation. Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
Now to the war in the Middle East, and Donald Trump has scolded America's allies who've rebuffed his request to help protect oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. It comes as some of those countries warn Israel against a major ground offensive in Lebanon, arguing the humanitarian situation there is already alarming. ABC correspondent Catherine Diss reports from Metula near the Israel-Lebanon border.
A wave of drone and rocket attacks on the American embassy in Baghdad. Air defence systems activated. A nearby hotel in the Iraqi capital also targeted. Hundreds of kilometres away, Iranian missiles are intercepted by Israeli forces. Shrapnel falling onto a home in the occupied East Jerusalem and in the Old City, home to holy sites.
The Iranian regime is trying to create as much chaos as possible.
Chaos in Iran too, as the US and Israel continue their assault. Search and rescue crews pulling survivors from the rubble in Tehran.
There are no IRGC forces, no military personnel and no base here. All of these are homes.
Iran is leveraging its ability to cause economic pain, with traffic through the Strait of Hormuz remaining mostly at a standstill. The US president is ramping up pressure on other nations to help protect oil tankers in the critical shipping lane, warning he could delay his upcoming trip to China and taking another swipe at NATO countries.
Thank you very much. We don't need them, but it's interesting. I'm almost doing it in some cases, not because we need them, but because I want to find out how they react.
We will not be drawn into the wider war.
The wider war expanding again as Israel conducts what it's called a limited ground operation against the Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon. In Israel's north, the military build-up on this side of the border is clear.
We're just hearing an air raid siren now. That's telling us to take shelter. So let's move. Okay. While it's too early to know whether this limited and targeted campaign will become a full-scale ground invasion, we are constantly hearing rounds of artillery being fired into Lebanese territory, and the Israeli government is reportedly undertaking a mass mobilisation campaign of 450,000 reservists.
Cafe owner Miri Menashe hopes to be one of them.
You keep your country safe, you fight for it. Eventually, you live in peace.
The prospect of peace uncertain in an ever-escalating conflict. Catherine Diss, ABC News, Metula.
As war rages, the United Arab Emirates and the 24,000 Australians living there are navigating a new normal. Home to the world's busiest airport in Dubai, which contributes about $53 billion to the local economy, the Emirates have built their success as a regional safe haven. But the numerous airport closures as recently as yesterday and missile and drone attacks in central business and tourism areas are damaging that reputation. Global Affairs editor Laura Tingle has more from Dubai.
Striking at the heart of Dubai's financial hub, debris setting this skyscraper alight.
Target destroyed.
For more than 2 weeks, the UAE has fended off hundreds of Iranian drones and missiles.
Oh my God.
Disrupting air travel, putting off tourists who usually pack these iconic sites.
When you heard the alert, when you hear the thuds of interception and so forth, incredible unease. And then a feeling of resilience started to set in. Well, people were like, we will not be cowards.
Australian businessman Brett Evans still feels safe living in Dubai.
The government has been very forthright in terms of keeping us informed. The information flows through and we're able to get direction from the government and able to make informed decisions. Then I can't see any reason to leave.
In Abu Dhabi, Australia's ambassador to the UAE is now working from home.
Throughout the day, we hear the piercing sounds of the emergency security alerts, and you hear these very loud explosions or bangs that shake the house and the windows.
Last week, Australia sent a surveillance aircraft to help the UAE against Iranian bombardment.
We've been working around the clock because our main priority is, of course, the safety and security of the Australian community.
While both Emiratis and the huge international residents community in the UAE are adjusting their day-to-day lives to the uncertainty of constant bombardments, the outlook is highly uncertain. The Gulf state has prospered by becoming a global air transport hub through tourism and as a major financial centre. But Iran's strategy is designed to shake the confidence of investors and travellers alike.
People are asking questions about property prices, about tourism, about airlines. But so far, it's still quite early days to be able to assess those. We didn't want this fight.
A fight they didn't start and can't end. Laura Tingle, ABC News, Dubai.
The two players from the Iranian women's soccer team who chose to stay in Australia have been training with the Brisbane Roar A-League club. The women joined the team for a practice session as they adjust to their new lives. They are the only two members of Iran's team still in Australia after 4 of their fellow players and a team handler withdrew their bid for asylum. Brisbane Roar shared the images on social media, prompting one of the Iranian players to write "Thank you for everything." In another developing conflict, Afghanistan's Taliban government has accused Pakistan of targeting a Kabul hospital, killing at least 400 people. The government said an airstrike destroyed parts of the 2,000-bed facility used for the treatment of drug users. Local television posted vision of firefighters struggling to extinguish the flames. Pakistan has dismissed the accusation, saying its strikes, which were also conducted in eastern Afghanistan, have not hit any civilian sites. It's marked a dramatic escalation of a conflict that began late last month. And to finance now, and surprisingly, the Australian dollar fell and the share market went up when today's rate hike was announced by the Reserve Bank. Here's Alan Kohler.
Usually when interest rates go up, you'd expect the currency to go higher and the share market to fall. But that's not what happened today. At 2:30, the Australian dollar fell and the All Ordinaries on the share market went up, then went down, then went up again. Traders were on an emotional roller coaster. So why did that happen? Well, maybe because the vote was a close call. 4 of the 9 members of the Monetary Policy Board voted to leave rates on hold, but were outvoted by the other 5. Who voted what, we don't know. But I would note that the board consists of 5 full-time economists with either PhDs or master's degrees, including the Governor and the Deputy Governor, plus 3 business people and the Treasury Secretary. That's 4. Now, whoever the 4 were who voted against a hike, maybe they had in mind that this would actually be the 3rd one this year. The second one being the increase in petrol prices since February the 28th, which has added the equivalent of about 80% of a rate hike to family outgoings. And unsurprisingly, consumer sentiment is now tanking. So the question is, are we miserable enough yet? Beleaguered borrowers only need one of the voters on the board to flip for the May decision to be a hold. And in fact, because of that, the market has now reduced the odds of a May hike from 100% to 36%. The Aussie dollar is changing hands for about the same as it was last night. The price of Brent crude oil is back above $100 a barrel, up 3%. Global share markets went up today, led by a solid gain in New York last night, so markets are pretty sure that the war in Iran and the closure of the Persian Gulf won't go on for much longer. And the local share market went up a bit, thanks to gains by banks and miners. And that's finance.
And there'll be more on today's interest rate rise on 7:30 when Sarah Ferguson interviews the Treasurer Jim Chalmers live. It's do or die for the Matildas tonight in Perth as they face China in the first Asian Cup semi-final, with the winner progressing to Saturday's decider in Sydney. ABC reporter Blake Kagi is outside Perth Stadium. Blake, what's the latest?
Kyle, the latest is that it's hot by Perth standards, very hot for this time of year, a forecast top of 32 degrees, so very difficult conditions for the players tonight. Now, the Matildas have spent the day going about their match day preparations as per normal. They took a walk along the Swan River and there were some very relaxed looking faces as they took that walk. But what's on the line for them tonight is no doubt massive. The chance to qualify for the final of a major tournament on home soil is a very rare opportunity for any footballer really, and that's exactly what they have in front of them tonight. Now, standing in their way is a Chinese team that has conceded just one goal throughout the entire Asian Cup to this point, and also a team coached by a very familiar face to the Australians. Ante Milicic led the Matildas to the World Cup in 2019. So that's what's in the Matildas' way tonight, and it's all on the line. The winner will be the first team to qualify for the Asian Cup final in Sydney on Saturday night, while for the loser, their Asian Cup dream is over.
Thanks, Blake. Collingwood veteran Scott Pendlebury's clean record stands after successfully fighting his one-match rough conduct charge at the tribunal. The Magpie Premiership star was instead fined $3,000 and will now face the Giants in 10 days' time.
Scott Pendlebury has proved there's a first time for everything. After 427 games, just 5 games off the all-time games record, the 38-year-old made his tribunal debut for this bump.
Clash your heads with Worrell and Pendlebury.
But his one-match ban was overturned after the Magpies argued the veteran was bracing for contact and recognised his exemplary record of just 3 fines in 21 sessions.
He's too old for that sort of stuff, isn't he?
2 games into his AFL career and already Jagger Smith has a Rising Star nomination on his resume. The 20-year-old watched on last season after rupturing his ACL, but found a silver lining in the elite game of his All-Australian teammate Sam Walsh.
I was lucky enough I was able to sit in a few of his reviews, so it was actually like I was playing a game each week.
The Demons' 13-point win to start the year is something to celebrate. Sidelined until round 8 with an Achilles injury, but Jack Viney is itching to be part of Melbourne's new offensive game style.
It's exciting for sure. I want to be part of it ASAP. You can train it for months amongst yourselves, but until you really come up against competition, you're not sure how you're going to shape up.
Irish star Zach Toohey helped the Demons celebrate the return of Jim's game, the round 6 clash dedicated to Irish player Jim Stynes, and now wants to see the International Rules Series back on the calendar.
Unless there's some logistical issue that I'm not aware of, I can't see why you wouldn't bring a men's and women's series back in tandem.
Meanwhile, Essendon won't panic just yet, refusing to sound the alarm despite a 62-point round 1 loss to Hawthorn.
It's not throwing everything out right now. There's an element of they were very good versus us, and some of the mistakes are, maybe a little bit of opening night nerves.
Alexia Pesce, ABC News.
And now to the weather, and tonight's weather pick of a storm around the Tanami has been sent in by Bruce Staines. And you can send us your weather photos to weatherpicsnt@abc.net.au. There were heavy showers and storms across the Todd River catchment today. It was 32 in Darwin, 31 at Warramayunga. Zooming out, 32 in Katherine, 33 at Jabiru, and Borroloola 34. Alice Springs reached 24, Yalara 26 degrees, and Tennant Creek 33. On the satellite, a large area of cloud stretches from the south of the NT to the southeast of the country, and a band of storms stretches from the west of the top end. A large area of low pressure is over the north of the country, and a trough over central Australia will continue moving east. Interstate tomorrow, 23 degrees, the top for Hobart, partly cloudy for Melbourne, a shower or 2 for Canberra, a bit of wet weather as well for Sydney. For Brisbane, a top of 29 degrees, cloudy conditions in Adelaide, and Perth reaching a top of 36. Around the Northern Territory tomorrow, Alice Springs 25 with a shower or 2, 28 for Papunya, Tennant Creek a possible storm. Further north, showers for Katherine, there could be a storm tomorrow, and 31 in Galawinku and a shower or 2 for Nhulunbuy. And looking west, showers and a developing storm for Batchelor, and for Darwin tomorrow, a top of 31 degrees with showers, and we could see an afternoon storm as well. There's a flood watch for much of the south of the Northern Territory, with flooding occurring in parts of that area and the chance of further flooding. A major flood warning continues for Daly River and is likely lingering through the week, and there's a minor flood warning for Katherine River. There's a morning high tide at 5:53, and a low tide at 12:17 in the afternoon. The sun will rise tomorrow at 6:49 and set just before 7 o'clock. And looking ahead, showers expected to hang around for Darwin with the possibility of some storms. We could see those conditions picking up a bit for Darwin over the weekend, and Alice Springs could still see a bit of wet weather, though we are expecting some smaller falls for any of those expected showers for Alice. And stay with us now, Sarah Ferguson is up next with 7:30. Good night.